And we are back to Midjourney. A couple of changes. They have finally made their website public for everyone. So I thought I'd give you an update and make it a general course on using Midjourney. So if you're a total beginner, this is the course for you. When you sign up for Midjourney, this should be the first page that you see. And we will go over all of the details, all of the functions inbuilt, and go over this step by step. First up, maybe your layout looks a little bit different. It's because I've got the dark mode active. So maybe yours is the light mode or the system, which is the same. I'm going to use the dark mode. It's a little bit easier on the eye when you watch YouTube videos. And this is the explore page, which is also the main page that pops up when you start Midjourney. You can randomize results so that you see different images. And you can left click on each and then you'll see the prompt. And these boxes below, these are called parameters. Don't worry too much about it for now. As I've said, we're going to go over all of this. But here we can see 3 AR, which would be the aspect ratio. V is for the version. And then a personalize parameter. Let's get back. We can filter this by hot and then top of the day, week, month. And then also your personal likes. Should be empty if you've just started using Midjourney. Next up, we've got the updates. This is for the developer team announcements. And here we can see now the website is open to everyone. Help is interesting. Well, one is we've got a community chat on the right. Server status is important when there are issues. You will find information about that here. Most important is getting started for you if you are a beginner, because this redirects you to the official help page. And here are lots of info stored on how to use Midjourney. So you definitely want to check that out. Let's get back. We've got something called tasks, and you can earn some GPU, some extra time. And it's also necessary to do a couple of these tasks to have the personalize unlocked. You have to, for example, rank images. Already done that for level 1. And you can see below you need 500 ratings, for example, for level 2. And if you click on start teaching, this is about teaching the AI what aesthetics you like. In this case, you can press 1, 2, 3. 1 is for the left, 2 for the right, and 3 is for skip. So you just pick the one that you like better. And this way the AI learns your personalized aesthetics. And is going to be used then in your future image generations. So it's a good idea to do that from time to time. Here we have more chats and a daily theme. So there's always a daily theme that users then use to generate their own, for example, here floral owls. And then the image generations are featured right here. Let's get to organize. This way you can see all of the images that you've got generated. And then you can put them in your own folders. So it says create folder, and you can do that if you create a lot. Certainly helpful. I haven't done much lately, but I'm going to get into it a little bit more. So it makes sense for me in the future to create some folders. You can also change the layout here. So far so good. These were the basics. Let's get to the most important part here, which is create. You can see your last creations, and you have this top bar where you type in your prompts, and if you press enter, this is what's going to get created. Let me just type in robot. You can see it's going to get completed from 0 to 100%. Takes a little bit of time depending on your settings. We'll go over that as well in one of the following chapters of this course. And here we have parameters v6.1, that's the current version that's used for the image generation, and the personalize parameter. As I've said, I've got the personalization unlocked and I use it here, so it uses my aesthetic preferences to generate these images. You always get 4, so for every prompt that you type in, there will be 4 results, and you can vary them using subtle or strong. Let's just do this for the last image here, and you can see a new set of 4 images is being generated. And now we have a variation tag here. You can also left click on these images, and then you have this specific one with more options. Once again, we'll talk about that later. Important is here is the download button. So if you left click on it, this should be downloaded. Let me check my download folder. And here we can see it now. So I've got this image downloaded. Be aware that this is the smaller version. So usually you want to upscale this before downloading it. And you can do that here under more options. So this makes the image bigger. Therefore it has a higher resolution. And this is usually what you want before downloading it. Again, something that we'll talk about in detail later on. You can see the subtle variation and above the strong. So strong gives itself a little bit more freedom. Subtle is a little bit closer to what was there prior. And the third thing that you might ask yourself is, how can you properly prompt something? So I just typed in robot, but you can also write create a robot. So what gives you better results? And if we go back to official guide under prompts, you can see that we want to be short and descriptive and leave out all of these filler words. And here's a specific example. We don't want to have show me a picture of lots of blooming California poppies and so forth. Instead, you just want to use bright orange California poppies drawn with color pencil. So make it as short as possible, use descriptive word, get rid of all of these filler words and articles, stuff like this that's not needed. Most important are subjects and adjectives. For the word choice, you want to then be specific, so big is fine. But if you use huge and gigantic, enormous, immense, this has a different impact because something that's big might not be as big as something that's humongous or enormous or whatever. So there is a difference in how the AI treats these adjectives. The same goes for descriptions of groups. When you say you want to have a bunch of cats or you want to have 7 cats, 7 is obviously more specific. And it's also more specific to say a bunch of birds instead of just birds. So always think about that when you prompt. Always be positive in the way you phrase it. So don't write car that isn't red, but instead make it a green car. And then you can be sure that it won't be red. You can use single words as I've shown you. You can also use emojis. And from experience, I can tell you that all of these long prompts, usually they don't have much of an impact. So when you have like 50 words in your prompt, most of that is going to be filtered out by the AI anyway. So keep it as short and brief. This gives you, for the most part, the best results. And if you add a lot of words to it, it doesn't make a huge difference anymore. At least that's my experience. I'm going to show you an example now where we're going to use a couple of these principles, and I will also show you that the AI is going to, I don't want to say omit, but going to filter out at least a little bit words from longer prompts. And let's go to explore prompting. The AI knows a couple of art styles, even weird ones that I've never heard. Let us use this on our robot example. So instead of using create a robot, we just use robots and we'll put the art style in front. Let us use block print, robots, and maybe pixel art. Again, I type that in and then I press enter, which already starts the image generation. Let us go down. You can get more specific with the art styles. For example, drawing would be fine, but charcoal drawing is a different thing. You can add specific errors, so time errors. Let me make that robot in 1800s. Obviously, adjectives that specify a specific emotion. So let me make that happy robot. And then adjectives for the color. Let us use maybe acid green. So prompt acid green robot. Environmental exploration. What can we pick here? Let me use a robot in desert. First ones are already finished. So here's our block print, and above the pixel art robot. Totally different results, as you can see, in the charcoal sketch robot. Robot in the 1800s. And then the happy robot. Acid green. And then robot in desert. You can combine all of that, but here again, I'll overload this prompt a little bit. So let me make that happy robot 1800s acid green, and let me add pixel art to it. And the result tries to mix it all, but from my experience, it won't get it all. So this is a little bit too much for the AI to handle. We usually should get the color, so acid green, the robot, which is the main subject here, but the rest, I don't see much 1800s here. Pixel art, maybe a little bit. And it also filtered out the happiness quite a lot, especially in the second image. And this is what I mean. If you add these long prompts, these wordy prompts, 50 words, most of your prompt is going to get filtered out or neglected anyway. So keep it short, keep it precise and specific. And this usually gives you better results than trying to write a novel here. It's a good idea for you to practice this. So don't just watch my video, use that video. Create your own first prompts, check out the official guide under help of Midjourney, and then try to figure out these prompt explorations that were given. Use different times, use different colors, use different art styles, and only if you've done some prompting, some testing, come back for the next chapter. Let us get back to the prompting above, and if you click on the settings icon, you can see more options. First up, let's talk about the speed. This is the generation speed, so how fast your images are generated. And in the help guide, we can find a little bit of explanation between relaxed, fast, and turbo mode. Generally, you have a GPU, so you have a certain amount of time that you can waste on generating your images. And the faster you want to have them, the more of this time is burned. And here you can see in the basic plan, relaxed isn't even available anymore. But usually this is the slowest, and you have in most plans an unlimited amount of time to waste in relax mode. Depending on when you watch the video, the plans might change, so you have to check that on the official homepage. But I like to use fast and turbo. I rarely use that. It is super fast, but I don't really need it. Fast gives you most of the images, even in busy times when there is a lot of demand. You will get your fast images within like 20 seconds. Relax can take some time, a minute, sometimes even 2 minutes when it's busy. And turbo will give you results in like 5 seconds. Let me run it with the same prompt robot. You can see here 0 of 3. And there you go, it's finished. As I said, this is a matter of seconds. Second one was fast and it's already done. Took us like 10 seconds. And the relaxed, it takes itself time. Once again, I use fast. It's usually okay for my plan. But in general, if your image generation is very slow, you might want to check that. It might be set to relaxed, then set it to fast, and it should be way faster. I've already shown you can download these images here and also like them. But under more options, let me uncheck all of that. And we only want to check the upscale right here. And here you can see we have 2 upscale options, which is subtle and creative. Let me do both for our image here. And we go back to create and to our Midjourney guide, and we'll check the upscalers. So 2 options currently available. Upscale subtle tries to stick to the original. So it doubles the size of your image, what you in most cases definitely want to have. Before you download it, because then the resolution is higher, your images are of higher quality, you could say. And the creative upscaler, it gives itself more freedom. So there might be changes in the image that are added. Let us check that. You can see our relax is still running in the background. So it's no more than a minute. Our two upscalers are done. And let me download them. And in the parentheses here, next to upscale C and S, this indicates the upscale method. So as subtle, C creative. And you can see if we compare our two images next to each other, differences aren't that impactful, but there are differences. Let's check, for example, right here, the ear of the robot. There's something different. The sparks on the left and on top. And the hand, you can see that very clearly. So these are the differences. If you want the upscaler to stick to the original, use the subtle. And if you don't mind and you actually want some variation, just try out the creative upscaler. But in general, it's a good idea to upscale your images before you download them. As I've said, this doubles the resolution. Here you've got more options for images. So you can still go to Discord and open the image there, hide it. Download button, you've seen that. So you can report it if there's something that shouldn't be there. And under copy, we will go over this later on. There are a couple more options that you might need for advanced or intermediate tasks. And let's get back to create. And here you can see the parameter AR. This is called the aspect ratio. You can set that under the settings right here. There are some presets. The default is always 1:1, which is a square. So if I run the robot, it will be 1:1. And here we have portrait and landscape aspect ratios. Let us check the aspect ratio in our official guide. You can see the parameter here is written -AR or -aspect. This is the way you had to access it or command it in Discord. When you wanted to set the aspect ratio, you always had to add -- and then AR to your prompt. And then on the Discord server, this parameter was set. You can still do that here. In the top settings, let us use 10:16, which isn't available in the presets. So we want that manually. If I write robot -AR, then you have to leave a spacing. See that here in the official guide. Parameter, then a spacing, and then you determine width and then height. And if we check our create, here's the square 1:1. The aspect ratio vanishes as a parameter. Here is 3:2. Then 9:16, and above our custom aspect ratio 5:8. So whenever you need a custom ratio, you need to go back to the old commands of the Discord server. So it's a good idea to know that you can still do that, -AR or -aspect, and then add your custom size. It is always written after the prompt, so the prompt comes before it, and then you add your parameters. There are many more, and we're going to go over all of them in this course, but this is the general approach to writing them. So prompt, then -, and then whatever parameter you need. It's always a good idea to try it out yourself, generate some images, use different aspect ratios. Definitely try out adding a custom aspect ratio, because that's something that you definitely are going to need if you use Midjourney a lot. And once you've done that, come back for the next chapter. Let's go back to create, and we will talk about the parameters that we've got here. We reset everything so that we start on the same page. Speed is set to fast. Let's talk about the mode first, and this is the style parameter. We have two options, standard and raw. Let me show this with a robot. I run it 2 times, and once we don't have a style parameter and once we have style raw. So this is what's added then when you generate your images. And in principle, the style raw makes it a little bit more realistic, you could say. And this is definitely something that you want to use when you want to create photorealism, So when you create images of models, this makes a big difference. You can also see that here for drawings and for icon design. Whenever you want to have results close to what it would look like in real life, then you add the raw mode. Let us go back and watch our generated images. For the robot, you can see that a little bit here. Style Raw gave us, for example, this result, which is a little bit more realistic. Even the one on the left here, something that could actually exist in real life. While the standard mode gave us more artistic expressions. Let me run it again with a pretty female model, once without the Style Raw, so regular, the standard mode, and a second time using Raw. And here are the results without Raw. You can still see that this is rendered. Especially the skin, it looks like a computer model. But when you add Style Raw, for example this one, this is photorealism, you can still see that it's idealistic, but it's definitely more towards realism than the results in the standard mode. So always use Raw when you want to have more realistic results. Let's go to the next parameter, which is the version. And here we can change that to old models of Midjourney. And we can also find the Niji models. These are for manga styles, comic styles. But be aware that for the new Niji model, when you set the personalization to on, this might not run. You have to first rate a couple of images. So if you haven't done that, I'll show you this in the next chapter. You have to go to personalize and rate a couple. So let me turn that off for Niji Model 6. I run it again using the robot. And even for Niji, older versions are available. Just as a side note. You can now see here's my creation failed where I didn't watch for the personalization to turn it off. So if that happens, just turn it off and then Niji Model 6 should still run. For Niji, it sometimes makes sense to go back to older versions because they have a certain distinct art style, but older Midjourney versions, they don't have that much of a use. You can see in the documentation, the official, it's the -v, the version parameter. Alright, now let us talk about Personalize. I go back to model version 6.1, the current latest model, mode standard, and here Personalize. It gives your image generations your personal touch, your favorite aesthetics, and as I've said, you have to have at least 200 images rated for this to be available, so that the model actually knows what you like and what you don't like. And the more you rate images, the closer it will be to your personal favorite aesthetics. You can turn this on generally here or off, and start teaching means that you teach the model what you like, always using the keys 1, 2, 3. 1 is for the left, 2 for the right, and 3 is for skipping. If you don't like the left or right better, you can just skip it, go to the next one. So far so good. I'll leave this off for our tutorial. So let me turn it generally off here. Now we'll get back, and the official documentation is a little bit of info about this as well. So the parameter is now called Personalize or -p. And as always, I'm going to link to these chapters in the official documentation in the video description. So you will find that for every chapter. I'm going to make a link. Now let's get to the aesthetics. This is the general aesthetics, so not your personalized one. Stylization is the first. Default is 100. And there's one robot with 0 and 1000. So what does it do? It's very close to the style mode. So style raw was for very high realism and the standard mode for more artistic expression. Stylize, if you set it to 0, it's going to stay close to the prompt. But when you go very high, it gives you more of an artistic interpretation of the prompt. So the results are a little bit more random, you could say. Here we have a robot 0 and then 1000. Let me switch to drawing of a robot. I think this makes it a little bit more obvious. I go to 0 for stylization and I go to the max and we run it again. And while we do, let's check the documentation again. But now we have good comparison here. Stylize 0, drawing of a robot, is very close to the prompt, and Stylize 1000 gives itself more freedom so that the drawing becomes more like an illustration. The default is set to 100. Let's go to weird. So weirdness is now what it's called here, but the parameter is minus weird. Let us stick to drawing of a robot for minimum and max. Stylization is now set to 100 to the default. And this in principle gives you very experimental art styles. So when you go high, it's going to experiment with different results and more odd results. I think the word weird hits it quite well. When we check our robot, we can see that here a high value gives you more unexpected results, more experimental art styles, and a low value gives you more what you would expect. So this is a good way to randomize your results with odd styles. Chaos, it is now called variety here, but the parameter is minus chaos. It goes a little bit in that direction, but it's more about the variety of your image generations when you run them with the same prompt and the same values over and over again. So a low value gives you the results that you've had in your previous image generation, but when you go high, it adds randomness to it. You can see that here in the documentation. The higher the value, the more these results will differ from what was created initially. And the lower you go, the more you will get what you've gotten in your previous generations. So here for the shells and a low value, they all look the same. And the higher you go, the more randomness is introduced. And we can also see that here for a robot, the generation with a low chaos value, with the lowest in fact, is very close to what was created before, while the one with a high chaos gives us random results. So far so good. These are the general parameters that you can directly target here in this creation settings menu on the new web page. But there are more parameters that I'm going to talk about in the next chapters, but still try to check them all out, test them out, play a little bit around with it. As always, doing stuff makes you actually learn it and not just passively watch my video. So do some image generation to test out these parameters, and only after you've done that, come back for the next chapter. We can also edit our images in Midjourney. There are a couple of functions. When you left click on one that you like, you see right here under actions there are more options available. Already talked about upscaling, but here for example is vary, and you can see that here you have two options, subtle and strong, and both of them appear when you hover over your images under create directly. On Discord, all of these images were called V1 up to V4, so top left would be 1, top right 2, bottom left 3, bottom right 4. And strong and subtle, the difference is that it gives itself more freedom when you use a strong variation. Here in the examples, the subtle variation, the robot looks very much alike. But then there are bigger differences in the strong variation, and we have that here as well. It even changed perspective in the strong variation here on the top left. So whenever you have an image that you like, but it's not fully there where you want it to be, just use variation. And then there's a remix mode. In principle, it does the same, but you can also alter the prompt while the variation is created. So left click on the subtle remix. You can see it gives you the same prompt parameters and uses the image as a reference. Let me try robot smoking a cigarette. I don't know if it runs, but we'll try. And for the strong, I use robot with red laser eyes. This should definitely run. I've tried that before. Let us go back to the documentation. And here it says so we can edit the prompt, and not just the prompt, but also the parameters. So let me remix it again. And I change the aspect ratio to 1:1. So 16:9 is our reference here. And I simply change this parameter. So that's also possible in the remix mode. They haven't updated the guide, though it's still set to the way it's done on Discord. So here was the original. Let us scroll up. Here is smoking a cigarette, didn't work. We just have a little bit of smoke here in the background. But laser eyes, as I've said, this should run, and it did. And here is the 1:1 aspect ratio. It was successful. Doesn't look good, but it worked. Let us pick the next example. And here we want to use in prompt. This gives you 3 options. You can use this image, the prompt, or the style in your next image generation. Image, for example, just attaches this image as a reference, and then you can add a new prompt. Let me maybe prompt it robot flying in spaceship, something like this. I should spell that correctly. Style, again, it attaches the image, but now it only uses the style. So if I make this about something completely different, maybe a cyberpunk car, the robot will not be part of the image, but it will have the same style. And prompt just gives you the prompt and the parameters that were used. Let us check it. Here it turned the robot into a spaceship. What is the resemblance? I think that's obvious. When you left click on this little thumbnail here, you can see that this image was attached to the prompt, and the cyberpunk car, it used the same style. I think there's also resemblance obvious. Let's pick the next example. I want to check zooming first and then panning. Zooming by default we have 1.5 and 2, so it zooms out if you use that. And under 2x you can see this pen icon for customization. You cannot go bigger than 2, so if I type in 4 and press enter, it jumps back to 2x. But you can go, for example, to 1.7. If you press enter, this box is not a 2x anymore, it's a 1.7. And this should then run in the background. So it says so 2x, 1.5x. Keep in mind this doesn't increase the resolution, so it's not like upscaling. And custom zoom is use the parameter zoom, and you can set that with a numerical value. This is what we did by typing in 1.7. So here are the zooms. Here's a 2x, 1.7 above. What you can do is you can click on this and then zoom out yet again. So we zoomed out once 2x, and now we zoom out 2x on the 2x. You can do that in principle over and over and over again. Let me already run a new robot prompt here that we can use the other editing functions. You can see our next 2x, so this was 2x times 2x zoomed out. So if you want to, for example, have a custom zoom of 8 times, you just zoom out 3 times with the 2x. And this gives you 2, 4, and then 8. Let us use a new robot image for the next options, which was the panning. And panning gives you 4 directions, up, down, left, right. Let us run them all, and this will simply expand the image in these 4 directions. It obviously then changes the aspect ratio. Here we have a couple of examples in the guide, and just with zooming you can also pan multiple times, so you can expand these images 5, 6, 7 times in the same direction. That is also possible. Let us do that with this one. It was panned to the bottom, I believe. So let me pan it up and down. And this is how you could, for example, turn this robot head into a full robot body. And in the image generation, you can see it takes the original image, and then the part that's panning out is first blurry and then gets sharper and sharper. Once again, that changes the aspect ratio, keep that in mind. We now have a very weird aspect ratio, 55 times 86. Finally, under more options, we have the rerun, which simply reruns your prompt with the parameters, and an editor. And about the editor, I want to talk in the next chapter. This is going to be a bigger one. But before you proceed, check out all of these functions, create some variations, use the remix mode, reprompt your images. Try to use in prompt with image style and the prompt itself. Then try out zooming and panning and try to use that multiple times on the same image. Now let us talk about the image editor. We can access that for any image. We'll left click on it, but make sure that under more options, the more options right here is checked. Then you can see the rerun and right next to it the editor. When you open it, you see a little bit of a brush here. You can adjust the size with this slider from 50 to around 300, I believe. So it gets smaller to the left, bigger to the right. And then you have two options, erase and restore. I've got it set to erase, and let me get rid of this red element. And then I can restore parts. So this is simply adding and subtracting from the brush. You have undo, redo, and reset. Let me submit it. And usually when you do it like this, Midjourney knows that you want to get rid of something. So this red button, this red, or whatever it is, this red light should be gone. But let us take care of the eyes. And now we don't want to get rid of it, we want to add something to it. We can simply adjust our prompt on the right and maybe add red laser eyes and try if this runs. Let me undo it. We can also scale it down like this, which is basically a zoom out. Let me get rid of the laser eyes and I submit it again using the scale option. And to the right, we can change the aspect ratio. Let me go to 9:16. I submit it again. Let's check our creations. All right, it's gotten rid of this red element. Then here we have our red eyes, not really laser eyes, but it's definitely red. Here's the zoom that we've achieved using the scale. I've added red laser eyes here for the first, didn't change anything. And here is the changed aspect ratio. And you can always go back and then edit these images again. So let me switch it back to 16:9. And now we have a very big zoom effect. You can reset the prompt up here, so whatever you type into your prompt, you can reset it to the original. And these are the basics of using the editor. Let us go over a couple of use cases and I'll show you what inpainting and outpainting means. In principle, we've already done that, but these terms are floating around, so it might confuse you when you are not that experienced using Midjourney and then you hear it and you want to know what it is. Let's use a new image, maybe this one. I'll access the editor. And now let's just say we want to add something here on the right hand side in the background, maybe like a drone. And this would be called inpainting. So I use the brush and I erase the area where I want to add the drone. And now I add it to the prompt. I simply type in flying drone with a happy smile. And I submit it. And there was an error. Sometimes that happens, but I don't think that I did something wrong. There might be a problem on the web page or on the server. So let me restore it all and I try again. So I inpaint here this area. I add the prompt flying drone with a happy smile. I submit it and this time it runs. And here you go. It didn't work on all, but this one gave us a drone. I don't see a happy smile, but at least we have these cute robot eyes. So it's a hit and miss. You have to try it a couple of times, have to rerun it, maybe even do the editor, the inpainting again. But this is what it means. So when you hear the term inpainting, it just means using the editor and then adding parts or subtracting them from images using this method. Let us go over a different example. We create, for example, a Mars scene. And now we want to add a robot walking towards the horizon, something like this. So you inpaint. change your prompt, futuristic robot, maybe cyberpunk style, and then you hope for the best. As I said, it's a hit and miss, so you might have to reprompt that, rerun it. In this case, it didn't turn out good, so let me try it again. I keep the original prompt and then I add futuristic cyberpunk robot walking towards horizon, something like this. And this result is better, not perfect though, but you can see how the inpainting works. One use case where I use it quite a lot is when I create icon sets. You can easily do that now in Midjourney. Then we prompted icon set, green color, flat icon style, and maybe flowers and plants. So this is where we start, and then we get a certain design style. We'll access the editor, and then I erase a couple of these that I don't want to use, don't want to keep. And then I change the prompt. So I get from plants to something else, maybe farmers and cattle, something like this. And then I just submit it. And this ensures that the icon set will have the same style. So you can see that here we have a cow, cattle. Didn't really give me a farmer. But let me check the second try. Oh, we even have sheeps now, maybe a goat. And these new icons, they fit the overall design style of the flowers. And this is how you can create your sets. So you always use Inpainting and then change the prompt. And then you can be sure that the design style is somewhat similar and you can use that as a full-on icon set. Now let us take about Outpainting. We've done that a couple of times, but I've never called it that. It's simply zooming out or scaling out. Let us get back to robots. And we go over an example. I use this one, use the editor. And here I can use the scaling or directly drag on this image. I can change the aspect ratio. And the result is that this robot was now zoomed out, maybe repositioned. And this is simply what outpainting means. So we've done that a couple of times already. As always, make sure to try that out yourself. Use the editor a couple of times, do some inpainting, do some outpainting, and only after you've done that, come back for the next chapter. Next up is the style tuner, and this can only be accessed currently on Discord. You find Discord right here. You are asked to sign in or accept the invitation. I've already done that, so I don't have to do it. Let me just jump to my Discord. You can see I already ran a style tuner prompt because it takes a little bit of time for it to be completed. It says so 2 minutes, but sometimes it's even 10, 15 minutes. But you run your own style tuner by using the tune command. So you use /tune and then you write your prompt, whatever you want. Let me, for example, use model in California, sundress, sunshine, something like this. Then you confirm, and this window will pop up. Style Tuner is only available in version 5, so it's automatically set to it. You can adjust the style directions. I want to have it as quick as possible, so I'll go down to 16. And let me switch to raw mode here, because I want to have more realism. And then you confirm via submit. It's going to ask you if you actually want to spend this GPU time. So confirm again if you're okay with it. Then, as I've said, it takes a little bit of time. I already ran it for Happy Cute Robots. And once it's done, you'll get a link where you have your image generation. So this one was for Happy Cute Robot, as I've said. And then you have 2 rows in the middle row. And you pick what you like, left or right. And if you like either of them, you just keep it in center. And then you can see the style parameter gets a different value every time you select an image. Let me go over the entire selection. As I said, whenever I encounter a pair where I don't like one of them better than the other, I'll leave it in center. And every time I click on an image, you can see how this value changes for the style parameter. Here you see your code. This is the value of the parameter right here. You can copy only this or copy the entire prompt. As I've said, it's only available for version 5, so we have the V parameter set to 5.2 as well. You have to use the imagine command before it, then paste it, and now you can run it. And this image generation will be given your personal style. It's a nice thing to have, but to be honest, it's still a hit and miss here and there. For our prompt Happy Cute Robot, I think that's fine, but if you now change the prompt, for example, and you expect the same style to be given, it's not that easy, so you don't get this full style consistency. Let me, for example, imagine, and now I use something more realistic. Let me just use the model that I was using in the previous prompt. So model, for example, reading a book, and now I add this style reference, so style with our style tuner code, and I make sure to use the same version, which was 5.2, and now I run it. And it's not this illustration style that we have for the Happy Cute Robot. It goes a little bit in that direction, but it's definitely not the same style. You can see that here. As always, I'm going to link to the specific guide section of the Style Tuner. Here's just explain what we did, so you can go over this yourself if you want to, or if something was unclear. Let us switch back to the website, and here we can now use images as references. To be able to do that, we have this button right next to the prompt bar. You can left click on it, and this opens a couple of new functions. I don't have any images here, I've deleted them, but you can, for example, use the images that you've got here. For example, when you click on use, this only gives you the prompt, but when you left click on it and then you search for use, you can see you can also use the image. So let us reprompt that. Let me just make it a car, but I use this image additionally, and you can see that as a thumbnail now to the right of your image generation. While it runs, let me upload an image. You can do that right here, left click on it, and then you can browse. You can also drag and drop it there. Let me add an image of a model. You can use it later on. What you can do now is you can left click on it. It will be selected right here. And let me call that model and I'll run it. Let us get to our car. Not a robot anymore, but it has used the style of the robot, definitely the colors, to create our car. And for our model image, it goes the same way. Results aren't perfect, but if I open the original image, let me put it here to the right side, You can see the model has the same hair, same clothing, so it tried to use elements from the original and then add it to the image generation. There's a little bit more to it. Let us go back. I'll select the image again. And if you hover over it, you can see 3 options. First one is to use the image as a prompt reference, second is for style reference, and third is for character reference. And you can left click on that and this will then be active. Let me use the same prompt every time, which is model. And I use these 3 different options. When you just use the image as a prompt reference, there will be no additional icon added to the thumbnail, but for style and for character reference, this will be added to your thumbnail. While it does, there is a specific section about working with images on the web in the documentation as well. Yet again, you'll find a link to it in the video description. We're going to go over all of the details in this section of my course. Let's get back to our image generations. So here's our model as a style reference. And here's the model as a character reference. So it tries to keep most of the features in the original of the model, but the background totally changed. And here is the model as a simple prompt reference, so no icon in the thumbnail. Then we add a second image here. It's a simple texture. And now we left click on both images and we simply run it without a prompt. And this is now the new blending. You can also add something to the prompt, for example, model. And you can also change these references. So let me use the model as a character reference and the texture as a style reference. And now we'll just have to wait and see. Let me put the original images right here. Here was our model and the texture looks like this. In Midjourney, you had to use the blend command to blend these two. On the website, it just goes like this. You add the 2 images, press enter. You can also add more than 2 images. And here, I think this is the best way to use it. When you have a model, use it as a character reference, and your other image, use it as a style reference or prompt reference. And this should give you the best results when you work with models. When you hover over these images, you will find the trash can icon to delete them and this information icon. And the information icon is now the describe. On Discord, this was the describe command. And this tries to describe what is in the image, so how the AI interprets these images. Sometimes that's helpful for understanding how the AI interprets your prompts. Now both of these images don't have an artist reference. Let me go back to maybe this robot. I download it. I'll upload it here. I hover over the eye information icon. And this one has an artist reference. You can see that here known artists, subject, descriptors. So this is how the AI interprets images. And you can learn a lot about prompting when you use that from time to time. And this concludes our section about using style references and image references. Always a good idea to do some prompting yourself. Use some images, try to use the style tuner on the Discord server, do some blending, and check out the describe. Next up, we'll create text using Midjourney. This is a fairly new feature, only available since version 6. It's not perfect. I have to be honest here. You have to be lucky and There are certain things that you can do to improve your luck or your chances of luck, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Let us run a robot with a neon sign that says hello. I will, as always, link to the documentation. You can see that you have to add the text using double quotation marks. Single quotation marks don't work. And currently it's only standard Latin alphabet. English characters supported. Shorter words or shorter text elements work better. But you can also try to add these special characters. So slash, for example, here in Imagine, this works, and even longer phrases, read the docs. And in this case, we were somewhat successful using hello. Let me add a robot reading a book, and now we'll try to make it a bit more complex. On the cover of the book, it says Atlas Shrugged. Let's see how that runs. And while it does, we will also run the same robot prompt again, but this time I use single quotation marks, just to show you that this causes some issues. So make sure to always use double quotation marks. It improves your chances of the text being correct. Here, Atlas Shrugged, not too bad. A couple of issues here and there, but when you encounter that, there are a couple of things that you can do. Let's, for example, use this one. It missed a G. What we can do is to access the editor, and then we use Inpainting. So we specifically erase the portion where the mistake was. We can keep Atlas, which is okay, but Shrugged needs to be worked on. I'll keep the original prompt. I like to submit it 2 or 3 times because, as I've said, it's a question of luck sometimes. So the more generations you run, the more luck you're going to have. Here are the single quotation marks. You can see the issues. And here we ran it, and there's only one result that looks fine. Rest, it missed it again. Well, that's one way to try to solve it. Let us get back to a book cover. This time I'll make it a Jack Reacher novel that says Killing Time. Let's see how it can do that. But for a book cover, we want to have a different aspect ratio. 2:3, I believe, should be a good one. I'll keep the defaults, and once again, it's important that it's a version 6 or higher, because this won't run on version 5 or lower. You can also improve it by using the raw style. So here I've used the standard. Now I switch it to raw and use the same prompt, same version 6, aspect ratio 2:3. And now I use the text prompt again, style raw, version 6, 2:3 aspect ratio, and I go down with stylization to the lowest value. This is the stylized parameter. And this usually improves the chances of the text being correct as well. Let us check our results. You can see there are a couple of issues. So it doesn't spell that correctly. Sometimes there's a little bit of a spacing issue. But here the third one is okay. And at the top, which was stylized 0, style raw, the text looks somewhat fine. The second one is awful. The other 3, they hit it correctly. And here in the documentation, it gives us a little bit of a hint. So style raw usually works better. Low stylized values usually work better than high values. And if all chances fail, use vary region, which is the inpainting that we've done. So use the editor, erase the text, and run it again using the same prompt. In this case, let's say you like this cover, but text is a miss. Killing isn't correct. And in time, there's also an issue with the M letter. You can try to erase the entire text and run it again. Let us do that. Well, still didn't turn out good. Here the killing is fine, but time again, huge issue. So sometimes you just have to use the editor a couple of times and then run it over and over again, paint over the issues that are there. Try it selectively with just erasing a letter. Sometimes it makes sense to delete the entire text. In this case I keep time, because that's okay. Let's see if it fixes killing. And here again I ran it 2 times directly. We would have some winners here. So some of the results are actually useful now. Keep in mind this is all style raw, version 6 once again, and you will find the link to this documentation page as always in the video description. Onwards we go. I want to talk about some smaller side notes, but I think it's important stuff to know. First up, we can find the job ID and a seed of every photo right here. You can directly copy it. We paste it right here. The job ID is a very large number, and this is actually the number that's given to the image when you download it. So you get your username, the prompt, parameters, and then in the end this long number, which is the job ID. So whenever you lose an image, that's important info to know, because you can find all of your images using this job ID. More important for prompting though is the seed right here. Left click on it, should give you the message, copying seed successful. Paste it here, this is a smaller number. And we can use this to actually recreate all of our image generations. Let me paste the second one here. It's a different image, but it has the same number, because the seed is always the seed that's used by Midjourney to create your 4 image generations here. So per prompt you get 4 images. They will all be generated using the same seed. It's basically a randomizer, and you can set this using -- seed, which is the parameter. I use the same prompt, so robot, then -- seed, and I use the number. I run it again, and this will give us the same images that we've created earlier. You see that here in the official documentation. When you use the same seed, you should get the same images. And in this case, we actually have a little bit of a randomization, but you can see 3 out of these 4 images are the same. So the 4th image, it might be random a little bit, but the other ones are absolutely similar. And how can you use this now? Well, we can use it to create small variations. So that means the same prompt, -- seed. I paste the seed number. I'll have all the settings set the way they were. With stylization, I set it from the default to 200. So now we run the same images, same prompt, same seed, but a different stylization. And this will give us a little bit of a difference. In the end result, not much. It's basically a small variation. And this is how you can use the seed when you've got something that you really like and you want to keep it, but you want to have small variations and you want to actively choose what variations you want to have, and try out using the seed parameter, using the seed number, and then run it again. Next side note is you cannot prompt everything in Midjourney. There are a couple of words banned. I wasn't able to find an official documentation for banned words, and I've been searching for that for quite a while now. But this one seems to be legit and it's regularly updated, so I'm going to link to it. It's not from Midjourney officially, but it seems accurate to me. I haven't tried all of the words obviously, but we have some typical words that you could classify as gore. Adult words, obviously. I don't know what this is banned, but it seems to be. Even words like badonkers, whatever that is. And also some people, here for example Xi Jinping, you can't prompt him in Midjourney. So be careful with these words. You don't get banned from using Midjourney if you type them in. Usually you'll just get a warning message and it says it's not going to run your prompt when you have a banned word. But if your prompts don't run and you don't know why, it's a good idea to check this list, and maybe you're using a word that's on the banned words list. Just replace it and run your prompt again. Next up, I want to talk about upscaling yet again. We'll pick this one. It's the font size and I upscale it subtly. I'll download this one as well. While it upscales, let me go to Discord and I run a robot prompt using the aspect ratio of 16:9. Let's get back here. So we've got it upscaled. I download it and now we can check the size. This one here is the default size, around 1400 times 800. And this is the upscaled, which is 2x. So we have around 2900 times 1600. And this is now the limit in version 6, and even on Discord, this is the limit. So you can only 2x upscale it. In version 5, it was actually possible to upscale it 4 times. Let me scroll up. I've got an example here. So this was version 5.2, and then we have the option to upscale it 2x or 4x. Currently, this is not available when you use version 6, and you can't find it on the website. One tool that I like to use is Upscale right here. It's a free tool, so you don't have to pay anything. And there's a desktop version available that I've already downloaded. It takes a little bit of time to upscale the images, but the results are quite fine. You can select the images right here, then set your output folder, and then simply upscale it. I've got it set to the biggest settings, which is 4x. You can see that down here it would get up to 11,000 times 8,000. It takes a lot of time when you do it like this. But let me try to run it in the background while we take care of other stuff. Now let's get back to upscale. I've edited this video here. The 4x took way too much time. So I decided to go back and use the settings here. And within the settings you can go down, for example, to 2x. It should be quicker. And then here's our result. You can see that 2900 times 1600. So that's a 2x. And I've got it right here in my download folder. So try out this tool if you need bigger upscales and you want to use version 6. You can see you can even go up 4x up to 11,000. Takes some time once again, but it's a free option. So why not try it out? Link to it is in the description below. And finally, I want to talk about vectorizing your images. This comes in handy when you want to use it for illustrations, logos, stuff like this. So let me prompt a mascot logo for gaming. I go to square. Let me make that a bear. And I go down with stylization to 0. We want to have a bear mascot logo for gaming. This should give us a good result. I'll pick the 4th one here. I'll upscale it. When I download it, you can see this is a PNG. So what we need now is a PNG to SVG converter. And a free one that I could find is this one. It says always free, so it should stay free. It's this Kiwi vectorizer. Let me set it to color. Then I browse my PNG image of the bear mascot, and then I vectorize it, and within a couple of seconds you should get a result. When I download it, this is now an SVG, and you can open that in a web browser. And if you want to adjust it, it's a good idea to get yourself familiar with, for example, Inkscape. Inkscape is a free vector graphics tool. I've made tons of tutorials about that on my channel. Just to open it and show you, we will import our SVG right here, drag and drop it, confirm right here. And now we can, for example, use the nodes tool, select certain parts, recolor them, whatever we want to do. Let us talk about a couple of other parameters and commands. I would call them minor parameters and commands, but they're available. I wanted to cover them. One thing that's pretty useful is the tile command. Let me add pattern of abstract robots, then -- tile, and this creates a seamless pattern. Let me go to 16:9, the rest is the default, and I confirm. I also want to create a square pattern without the tile parameter. Again, as always, the official documentation will be found in the description. It's still available in version 6, and you can see how that works. It renders a small square and then repeats it. Already done that here with a couple of experiments. Let us check our results. Here is the pattern below, 16:9. Let us check our squares. I'll pick this one. And now I use this for my prompt as an image. Let's just say I like the robots, so I want to keep them as characters. So I use the character option here, and then I repeat the prompt. The pattern of abstract robots and the -- tile. But I have to set the aspect ratio now to 16:9, and I run it. You know what, let me run that again using the image, but this time not as a character. I also want to use a different one. This time I use it as a style reference. But I'm going to use the same prompt, aspect ratio 16:9. First one already ran. You can see the robots are similar. Change the background, change a little bit of the styling. This is what happens when you use that as a character reference. Style reference, it should have the same colors, same style, and it does. Once you've got an image that you like using this type parameter, download it, and then you can use a seamless pattern generator. There's one linked in the official documentation, and I'm going to link to it as well. You can just drag and drop your files here. I'll click on file and then upload it. So this is our robot pattern, and then you have the slider to make it bigger or smaller. So add or subtract tiles. Once you've got what you want, download it here. Let me open it. So the -- tile parameter is something worth knowing, especially when you want to create these typical seamless pattern. For example, for wallpaper designs and stuff like this. The next parameter that I wanted to go over is the stop parameter, and this can be used to stop your image generation midway. So usually this goes from 0 to 100%. Let me get back to robots and I add -- stop. and I set it to 50. Don't get confused here, even though it says 50, it's going to run the completion rate fully from 0 to 100% on the top left here, but it will still be stopped at 50% generation rate. So the image will be a little bit blurry and a couple of details will be missing. Let me go to maybe 25 and it becomes even more obvious. So run the robot again, minus minus stop, 25, which is 25%. And the documentation, we have an example here from 10 to 100%. Use case for this would be if you want to have these blurry results, low detail level, go down to 50 or even lower. But that's basically it. Here's 25% and you can see a lot of blurriness. So this runs even though it says it goes from 0 to 100% completion. Next parameter is fairly useful. It's called repeat or simply minus minus R. This can be used to repeat your prompts or your tasks. And that simply means that if you prompt, for example, something, let me go to robot minus minus R4, and you prompt something with a huge variation, so large variety for chaos, let me go to 50, that should be the most obvious, and I run it directly. You can already see here we have 4 jobs running, already 3 are running at the same time, 4th one is queued, and this is what the repeat parameter does. It runs this multiple times and you can go up to 40, I believe. Let me check the documentation again. The amount depends on your plan that you've got, that you're subscribed to. You can see that here basic subscribers to the 4, standard to the 10, and pro and mega to the 40. So 40 is the upper limit if you have the highest plan. First ones are already done. And when you have chaos that high, you can see this is very useful when you're in this brainstorming phase and you just want to have a lot of results to pick from, to choose from. Minus minus R or minus minus repeat. A good parameter to know. Next parameter is the no parameter. And this can be used to exclude stuff from your prompts. It's a hit and miss with some prompts. So let me run robot. I haven't done that before, so I don't know if the results will be working. I use robot minus minus no, and then I add what I don't want to have included in my images. So once I use eyes, second I use arms. You can add multiple. So if you use minus minus no and then add multiple items, you can do that right here. Let me add it like this, and then once with comma, separating the items. As I've said, I haven't done that before, so I don't know if it will actually work on the robot prompt. First one is already done. No eyes, it didn't work at all. That's what I mean by hit and miss. For some prompts, it simply doesn't have an impact. Here, no arms, maybe a little bit. No eyes and arms. At least here we have a result without eyes. That wasn't the best example, my bad. Let me run it again with the example that's given in the documentation. It's about a still life, and then if you don't want to have fruits, minus minus no, and then fruit. So I make it still life, no fruit, and I also make it still life, no fruit, comma, flowers. Let's see how that works. And here's just a simple explanation. So when you use, for example, still life, painting without any fruit, or please don't add fruits, Midjourney bot can't really interpret that. So it doesn't interpret language the way we do. Things like no fruit, without fruit, don't add fruits. This is not going to run. Use the minus minus no parameter before it, and you should have a better rate of success. Here's still life, no fruit. This works well. No fruit, no flowers also worked well. We also have a quality parameter, and this can be used to add levels of detail. A simple parameter is minus Q or minus quality. Default is 1, so if you don't add the Q parameter, you will have a value of 1 added. And the lower you go, 0.25 is actually the lowest, but that doesn't run currently in 6.1, in version 6.1. And quality 2 is the highest, that only works in 6.1. Here we have a comparison. Level of detail rises as the quality value rises. Here we have quality 0.5, lower quality level, the default of 1 above, and quality of 2 takes longer time. So when you add more details, Midjourney takes longer to generate these images. And now we have our results. So quality 2, I think it's obvious, has the most details. Finally, I want to talk about something called permutation. Sounds fancy, but it's pretty easy to understand what it is. Let's say we want to have 3 cars in 3 different colors. When we write it like this, we might only get 1 car having all of these 3 colors at once. So what we actually want is to prompt it 3 times. And permutations just do that for you a little bit quicker. All that it takes is to use curly brackets, and then inside you add the parameter or the value that you want to change in each prompt. So in our case, car red, car green, car blue. Therefore red, green, blue needs to be in these curly brackets. If I prompt this now, we will have 3 image generations run directly. So car red, car green, and car blue. And you can already get a sense of how much time that can save you if you have a larger prompt and you want to run it multiple times. Let's check the documentation. It says curly brackets separated with a comma. Here's an example with birds. And you can also run this with parameters. But let's check our cars first. They're all done. Red, green, and blue. As I said, you can also do that using parameters. Let's just use the aspect ratio. We run a robot, and then inside we want to change it. To do that, we'll place the aspect ratio itself outside of the brackets. Here's an example. And then the values, they should change. Therefore, they should be inside of the curly brackets. So robot minus AR, then curly brackets 16:9, 3/2, 2/3. And if I run it, we have 3 image generations running using this aspect ratio. So what we get now is a value for the aspect ratio that changes, but the prompt robot and minus AR, this is kept for each image generation, for each prompt. And here we have our results, 16:9, 3/2, and on top 2/3. As always, good idea to try that out yourself. Go over the content of the last chapters, create a seamless pattern, try out the repeat parameter, maybe the stop. Definitely check out the no and the quality, and then finally try out this new permutation. As promised, let me show you some use cases. First up, I want to show you how to create vector illustrations. Good idea is to use the keyword flat vector illustration and then what you want to have. Let's just say a businessman in front of a bar chart, some whiteboard, something like this. So I make it a flat vector illustration, businessman in front of whiteboard showing a bar chart. I'll set the aspect ratio to a square and I'll run it. But I see I've still set it to version 5.1 from the last chapter, so let me fix that. Go to 6.1, I get rid of this parameter here. One more thing that makes sense is that you go down with the stylization. So let me use this prompt again using 6.1. And here I set it down to the lowest value, which is 0. This gets rid of details. If you want to have something that has a higher level of detail, just go up with the stylize. Like 400 should be enough. Let me run that as well. And now we can compare it. In 5.1 that already worked, but 6.1 the results are very good. Here's 6.1 with a low stylization. As I've said, this reduces the level of detail. And if you go up, it's going to add more details. And usually these flat vector illustrations, they have low levels of detail. So you want to go down. I think it's obvious when we compare 0 to 400 in stylize. Once you've got something that you want, let's pick this one. We'll upscale it as usual. Once it's done, we're going to download it. And then we switch to our vectorizer. I've introduced this in a previous chapter. It's a free one on vectorizer.kiwi. You will find a link to it in the description below. I forgot to set this to color. So let me refresh this. I browse it, set it to color, and then vectorize image. This should work. And here we have our result. So you can now download this right here, download SVG, and then adjust it in your vectorizer program if you want to, or use it directly. Next up, we can turn images into comic styles pretty easily using Midjourney. Let me use an image of a female model. I'll upload it here. And I'll also open it so that you can see what it looks like. So this is the original. What we need to do is to select it. Then we set it to character reference. So the first option on the left here. And now we simply add the keyword comic style. And then in this case, it's a portrait of a young woman. But comic style, this is what makes it, what turns it into comic style. And going down with stylization makes sense here as well. This is more like a 2x3, 3x4. So let me use that aspect ratio. And I run it. Version 6.1. You don't want to set it to raw, you want to have it set to standard, which is important as well. But then you should be good. And here are the results. You can see the third one is pretty close. So you get a good comic style. But you can also see that the details aren't perfect here and there, so you may have to run it a couple of times to get results that are very close to the original. What important is to set it to character reference and then use the keyword comic style. If I set this to image prompt or style reference, let me do that again. I make it comic style. Stylization, I go down and I keep the rest. I think the results aren't as close to the original. So as I've said, character reference is the important one here that you need to pick for your image. And then the results should be closer to your original. Next up, you can also use Midjourney to create logo designs now. I've already shown you a mascot logo in an earlier chapter. But if you, let's say, want to have a logo design for a gardening service, gardening company, just make it logo design as a prompt, which is the main keyword. And then add the service, in my case for gardening services. Stylization, I want to go down because I want to have it a minimalist logo. So this is more like a style reference that I like. You don't have to add that if you want to have a more complex result. But one more thing that I want to add is it's a good idea to add set off and then whatever style you want to have, and then the logo design keyword. And it's going to give you multiple results in the same image generation. And this will allow you to pick from a wider variety. Here we have our single logo design. Number 4 isn't that bad. Even number 3. Number 2 is okay. Number 1, I wouldn't use that. If you want to change the color specifically, just add it. So I prompt it again using the same prompt and simply add comma red. Here's our set. And this is what I mean. You get more results in the same image generation. Therefore, you have more to choose from. And here with the color red, it has been added to our logo designs. When you've got something that you like, let's just say it's in this image In this set of logos, you upscale it as usual. When you have it, you switch to a vectorizer. Again, I use our Kiwi. I vectorize it, then I download the SVG. And then I upload it to a vector illustration program like Inkscape, for example. And here you can adjust it. And you can also isolate it. To do that, I'll simply use a rectangle here, drag it on top, then I select it all, then right click and I set a clip, and now we've got this isolated logo design. Let us talk about photo realism. And you've certainly seen people claiming that you have to have these big prompts where there's even the lens specified. You know, use an 89mm, EOS, the camera type, and then they add 8K high quality photo, stuff like this. Maybe even some specifications for the shutter speed and the lighting. And I think that's all nonsense. Let me show you why. I'm going to run this prompt, and every time I'm going to get rid of details here. So I keep everything the same, but reduce the prompt step by step. Until we arrive at right here, beautiful girl, green eyes. And for all of these, I keep the same parameters. So aspect ratio, style raw, version 6.1 the latest, and then stylization is a little bit upped to 700. And now let's compare. So at the bottom, the most complex, and the further we scroll up, the less complex, the less detailed the prompt gets. And now you tell me, do you see a difference? I don't. So all of these little details that you add, the camera type, the lens, I don't think that it has an impact. It definitely doesn't have a huge impact. And I would even say that the first one, so beautiful girl green eyes, is as photorealistic as the last one here with all of these details. Just like it says in the documentation. So I talked about that in one of the first chapters. When you keep the prompt simple, Midjourney knows what to do. And most of the stuff that you add in detail is going to be omitted anyway, or it has such a low impact that you don't really see a difference. It makes sense though to add a keyword like ultra realist, ultra realism, ultra realistic, something like that, and then add your prompt. But it's the parameters that make the rest. You want to set the style to raw, which gives you more realism. For stylize, you want to experiment a little bit. The further you go up, the more details you get. And then obviously change the aspect ratio to what you need. And here again, very simple prompts, and we get the same level of realism that we've gotten with these very complex, these very detailed prompts. Good idea is always to experiment, so try it out yourself, but this is just my experience. Keep the prompt simple, and the further you go up in detail, it's not going to give you any guarantee that you're going to get more detailed results or more specific results. There's a little bit of a hit or miss involved in any of these prompts anyway. One more thing that I want to add is it might make sense to just search for an image of a model that you like or that you want, and then just add this here as a character reference to the general prompt, and then keep the rest as it was. So style raw once again, experiment with stylization, and keep the prompt simple. Let me set it to ultra realistic instead of ultra realist, but it shouldn't have a huge impact. But you get the idea. This is just a keyword to tell Midjourney that you don't want to have comic styles or anything like that. It should aim for more realism. And this is how I would create this photorealistic style. Now let us talk about cinematographic styles, and here the same. You can add these very long prompts with lots of details where you specify the camera type, the angle, the lighting, whatever. But if you keep it simple, it's going to be the same gamble anyway. Let us use this complex one. And then above, I've gotten rid of all of the details, and it has gotten rid of the sunset, so the lighting is a little bit different. This was just by accident here, so let me add that to the original prompt. That would make sense. So cinematic shot, man looking at horizon, and then I add something like dawn, maybe sunset. Once again, I use style raw, and for cinematography, aspect ratio should be 16:9. I think that's obvious. And here you go. Let's compare this one. Super simple prompt. And below we have this very detailed one. It's a different perspective, but you get the idea. This is a cinematographic shot. What you can add to increase the chances of getting good results is to simply add a director or a movie that you like. What is cinematography was impressive. We, for example, add Christopher Nolan, Stanley Kubrick, John Ford, and Tarantino. Let me also add Wes Anderson here. And this way you almost get good results every time. So this is the only detail that I would add. And we'll compare it. Once again, just my experience, but keep the prompt simple. Use only the words that are definitely needed. So for example, a director style, a movie style, and then what you want to have in it in as simple terms as possible. And don't obsess over all of these details, because most of the time it doesn't play a role anyway. Our final chapter, I want to talk a little bit about character consistency. One thing that you can do is to simply add a set of before whatever you want to have, let's say a female dancer. I'll make this set of the same female dancer in different poses, and then run it with a landscape aspect ratio. I'll set it to raw, and this will give you the same character a couple of times. While it does, let me prompt something else here using a character reference image. We've already used that image before. I'll make it a woman at the beach, and then the same woman reading a book. Let us go down to our set of dancers, and you can see how that works. It gives you the same character somewhat. There might be a couple of details that you have to adjust later on, and here we have an illustration for some reason that I didn't need. But here you can see it's the same woman, same style, same body type, a little bit of a difference here with the hair. So this is something that you would have to prompt later on and fix in the editor. But this method obviously has its limits. You can't just tell Midjourney to create hundreds of these little images inside of the same image. This would lead to a huge loss in quality if it runs at all. So the best way to create character consistency is to upload your own images, or upload an image of a character that you've created in Midjourney. For our example, I'll use this girl again, and we get at least a little bit of consistency. It's not perfect. There are always some details that are missing or that are being added. But Midjourney is getting there, step by step. I've seen it developing over the different versions that existed. And this is a huge step forward now using this character reference option. Let me use that again. Here's one limitation. We'll make it woman at the beach. Same character consistency, and this time wearing a bikini. And here, same girl reading a book in red. Let me make it a shirt, a red shirt. And I use it again wearing a hat or with a hat on, something like that. And this is not going to run because the character consistency option, it also checks for the dressing, the fashion, the hair obviously. So here we don't have a bikini because bikini is not part of the original image. And when we scroll up, we have prompted a red shirt. We haven't gotten that. Once again, the original fashion is kept. So nothing red in it. And we also don't get a hat. So how can we fix that? Well, what you need to do is to pick one that you like. Let's just say this one. And then you use the editor. And in the editor, we're going to add now the red shirt. If you just prompt it like this, it's not going to run. You have to erase the part where the red shirt should be. But this is also not going to run because we still have the character reference here. To make it work, we'll have to get rid of that. Let me first get rid here of this part. We only want to have the red shirt. But what we actually want to get rid of is here the image. Just click on the X and then run it. So wearing a red shirt is the only prompt. No character reference anymore. And this will be finally the solution. So here you can see wearing a red shirt doesn't work because I still have the character reference. But above, wearing a red shirt works because I've gotten rid of the reference. And this is a necessary step. Let me show you this also works on a beach photo, but I don't like any of these. You know what, just let me prompt this again. I use the image, character reference, woman at the beach, wearing a bikini. And I set the aspect ratio to portrait mode. This will not give us the bikini because of the character reference, but it will give us the character, and we need that in the first step. Then we use the editor. We'll erase the part where the bikini should be. We've gotten rid of the character reference here in the editor. And we've reprompted it to just wearing a bikini. Let me also make that wearing a red bikini. And now let me reset this completely. I erase the hair. Keep in mind character reference is already deleted here. And now I make it wearing a hat and maybe wearing a red hat. And now it runs. So we've taken this at the beach photo, and with the editor we were able to add a bikini now and change the clothing of the original. And it also added a hat. Red hat doesn't look good, but even that worked. So this is the way you should do it. Let me show you one more example. Let's say we pick this one. We want to use this model, so we download it, then we upload it here, or we can use it directly as an image under use at the bottom right. But to not lose it, I like to download it and then re-upload it. I'll make it a woman, let's say in a bar this time, drinking a cocktail. Still portrait mode, I'll keep that raw. But I believe I've forgotten to add the character reference. Yes, I've forgotten to add that, so let me prompt it again. Delete the other one, we don't need it. Our results aren't perfect, but you can see there is certainly a resemblance. Let's just say we want to pick the second one here, and we want to change her outfit. So editor, get rid of the character reference, paint over what you don't want to have anymore. And I want to give her like a shirt that is stick to red. And let's say we don't want her to wear a hat anymore. So we'll make that long dark hair or just dark hair, and we'll erase the hat. Let's check the results, and there you go. And it's the best process that I know, at least currently with version 6.1, to create this character consistency. To use your character as an uploaded image, character reference, and then get rid of the character reference in the editor, and then fix these little details that you want to change. And this concludes our Midjourney course for version 6.1, especially the website. I hope it was helpful. But if there was something missing, something was important to mention, or I should improve something, just let me know in the comment section below. In any case, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.